Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angela, and I'm with ProFarm Group, and I'm pleased to introduce to you my colleagues for this webinar, Improving Crop Health and Managing Abiotic Stress in Row Crops. Before we get started, I wanted to remind you all that we do have continuing education credits approved with the Certified Crop Advisors. And if you'd like, go ahead and either give it a screenshot of the screen or go ahead and scan the QR code with your camera app on your phone. And you'll receive credit for the course. If you have any problems scanning the QR code, we have had a few people on past webinars have challenges. Just let us know. We can email you the PDF, and sometimes that's a little easier to scan. I'll just give you a moment. Get started. Just a reminder that ProFarm Group is a publicly traded company. Any information shared in this presentation is used for educational purposes only. If you're interested in investing in our company or purchasing stock, we encourage you to conduct your own due diligence. Today, I'm pleased to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker is Brad Passion, and he is the Midwest Business Manager for row crops for ProFarm Group. He has been with the organization for just about 4 years and has an extensive experience in row crops. He'll be sharing information about how to manage abiotic stress with our product Emergen L. Our second speaker is Brian Miller. He's a senior field development manager in the Midwest with ProFarm Group and has been working closely with all of our products in the row crop sector. He has tremendous expertise in not only Emergen L, which Brad will be talking about, but he's going to be going into detail about our plant health product, Pacesetter. And then lastly, we have my colleague, Seth Little, who is a product manager for adjuvants and fertilizers. Seth is also a farmer in the Midwest, so he can share a lot of experience from that perspective as well. And Seth is going to be talking about our new adjuvant line that will be available and works wonderfully with the other products we'll be talking about today. We also have an important guest speaker, Scott Deno, with Wilson Fertilizer, who will be chatting a little bit later in the presentation and sharing some insights and experiences of using these products firsthand with growers throughout the Midwest. A little overview of what we'll be talking about today. So first, I'll give a quick overview of our company, and then we'll be talking about the new tool we have for managing abiotic stress with your herbicide application. After that, Brian will be talking about improving plant health with a BioUnite approach, which is combining or harnessing the power of biology with the performance of chemistry. And we'll have Scott chime in about grower experiences and from the field insights. And then lastly, Seth will be talking about the new tools to increase tank mix compatibility and spray efficacy. A little bit about our company. For those of you that may not be aware, we were previously known as Marone Bioinnovations, and in the summer of 2022, we merged with BioSeries Crop Solutions of South America. So that merger created BioSeries Crop Solutions based out of South America with 2 arms, ProFarm Group, which is the North American arm of the company, and then Rhizobacter, which is very well known in South America and is also distributing our products throughout the EMEA. This merge created the global leader in biological crop solutions with a variety of products available for crop protection, crop health, and crop nutrition. We aren't new on the block. We've actually been working in this biological sector for over 45 years. We have presence in over 45 countries, and our products are on over 75 million acres. Our seed treatment products are. And our inoculants are on over 23% of the world's soybeans. So to say we have a little bit of knowledge in the biological sector and how these products work with farmers of all sizes and all crops is an accurate statement, and one we're excited to talk more about with you today. A little bit deeper into our company and what we provide, we have a portfolio of over 500 different products that are available in all different types of applications for your crop. So everything from foliar sprays to seed treatments to soil applications. The past year, BioSeries generated a revenue of just over $350 million and has been growing at 20% over the last 4 years. Excuse me. We have manufacturing throughout the globe in South America, North America, and the EMEA. And we're excited to tell you today is we have the scale and the capabilities to help expand into the row crop sector of the Midwest. So we're going to be talking about those specific products today. Now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Brad, who is going to be talking about Emergen L and how it will help you mitigate abiotic stress with your herbicide application. So Brad, take it away.
Well, thank you, Angela, and welcome everybody. I'm glad you're joining us here at lunchtime, and hopefully you'll find that we've got something exciting to show you regarding our products. And like Angela said, I've been working in this space with our company for 4 years now, and the products we're going to talk about today, we have worked with each one of those very closely, and we're going to share some things that we've learned along the way today. I'm going to talk primarily about Emergen L, and this is a proprietary nutritional product, and it reduces abiotic stress, and we're going to show you some examples of that here in a bit. It optimizes then the conditions for increased nutrient uptake, and this is a proprietary product that's only available through ProFarm, and it's on, like Angela said, a lot of acres already in Europe and Latin America, and after 3+ years of testing here in the US, we're getting ready to have a full launch this season, and the product is readily available. We've had very strong results, and we're going to share some of that with you here today. This product can be used throughout the entire growing season, and we're going to focus primarily with our examples today on corn, soybeans, and wheat. We have tested it in the cotton market. We fit that herbicide pass all the way to that late fungicide pass, and we've got a number of customers who are already using it on both passes. So it's a very flexible product, can be used alone on that herbicide pass, or as you'll find out later, could be used with Pacesetter and also other fungicides on that later pass. So we talked about abiotic stress and what you might expect early in the season. One of the things that we always find is you hold on to more flowers. So every season we have a lot of stresses, and if you can hold on to more of those flowers, then obviously you're going to have less pod abortion. And then as you go throughout the season, you need to hold on to those pods. And if we can hold on to 4 to 6 more pods per plant, then that's where we're getting the yield increases that relate to real bushels, anywhere from 3 to 5 bushels later in the season. then you'll have more pods. And with those more pods, you'll also see bigger seed size. Um, and that's where the real yield comes from. In corn, early season, um, I have evaluated this. We've got hundreds of pictures that we can show, and today we're going to show just a few of them. But you'll have reduced tip back. So if you can hold on to 4 to 5 more kernels um, at the end of each row, then that's where the yield is coming from. We in mid-season, then we see a deeper kernel set. We'll see increased ear size, and then you'll find healthier. You'll find plants that can withstand um, late season heat stresses, and then standability then increases as well when you get there at harvest time. Um, Sometimes in seed corn production, um, when this is applied with fungicides, you will see 4 to 6 inches of regrowth within, you know, 10, 10 days, 2 weeks. And so it's really an interesting product. Here's an example of a herbicide application where we were demonstrating um, putting our product on at the herbicide timing. In this case, we planted Roundup Ready corn, and then we sprayed Liberty over the top of the corn. And of course, you'd expect that to kill the corn, but this was sprayed at V3 when the growing point was still below the ground. And what we learned from this is that we had a significant impact on keeping that plant healthy and bringing it back. And here's what it looked like then when we went back at 30 days after those applications. And you can see even the Liberty treated corn on the left. Um, Surprisingly, it survived, and a lot of it was that timing that we talked about earlier. But look at the big difference in what you see with Liberty and Emergen when they were applied together in a tank mix. We followed this then throughout the season. This is only about 15 minutes from my house, and over at AgReality, where we do some research. So we kept a real close eye on this. We even had a field day where Scott Deno, who will be speaking later, was at, and he had the opportunity to see this location as well. Then, very interestingly, we're a very small molecule. We get into the plant very quickly. And look at the roots and the stalk strength, significant differences there. So again, we're helping that plant overcome abiotic stress. In this case, the key stress was the herbicide application. And then later we had significant heat in August. There's what the ears looked at just prior to harvest. And you see less tip back on the left and a more consistent ear size. And, very, very visual on what the plants look like then as well. So Brian provided this information, and here's the difference in yield. I mean, 43 bushel difference. Now, granted, this was an extreme scenario that we set up, but look at all the different herbicide combinations that you have that you can visually see, setting your crop back, whether it's yellow flash with glyphosate or on soybeans, maybe it's, dicamba where it drawstrings the leaves of your plant. If we can avoid these, abiotic stresses and help that plant overcome it, then, if you think about it, this is your solar panel. And if we can have a bigger, healthier solar panel, then that's what's pushing more energy then into the grain throughout the season. Here's a dicamba field and just the difference in the drawstringing effect. And this was, roughly about 2 weeks after application. And you can see that the leaves have a lot less drawstringing effect that is mentioned. And interestingly, here's a wheat field that was sprayed to kill some really tough kochia, and they used some really hot herbicides there in North Dakota on their spring wheat. And Rich Gross, who works for us, also farms, and he's got nozzles in front of the tires on his sprayer, and you can see this is just 2 days after how much quicker the recovery was of that product. So interestingly enough, then here's what it looked like 2 weeks after, and you can see that wheat got off to a much better start after that herbicide application. And these are the type of I could show you, dozens and dozens of these over the last couple years, but these are just some examples more recently here that we thought were very, very interesting to show what Emergen L could do on your farm. I'm going to turn it on over to Brian. And Angela, if you could give him control of the slides, that'd be great.
Okay, great. So thank you, Brad. So I'm going to move forward with a discussion on Pacesetter. And Pacesetter is an extract from the renewed treated plant. This is going to help out with additional disease control and also plant health effects. And when I say plant health effects, I guess one of the things that will be most obvious to a user is that we're going to see an increase in chlorophyll production. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move on through. In using it with our fungicide program, we see an increase in about 4 to 6% from corn versus soybeans and wheat as well. We found that it's tank mix friendly. We can put in foliar fertilizers. We can put it in with fungicide applications. No mixing problems. You're going to find that this is a real nice solution and a nice add-on to the program. So a Pacesetter alone, we can put this in at 13 ounces. This is a recommendation. A lot of times we'll use for organic friends who really don't have much herbicide or fungicide options. And then we typically will look at a lower rate and then tank mix it with our fungicide program and the same timing. Water rates, we want to see between 10 gallons, 10 to 20 gallons. So pretty common for what we're using with our fungicide application for targets. In corn, generally speaking, we're looking at essentially a BT timing, plus or minus on either direction. We do have some discussions about a VT or an earlier application where we're going to put it in early and then follow with a later application. I'm thinking in this particular case, there's been some questions about what do I do about tar spot? So maybe just a little ahead of tassel and then a second application a little bit later on before tar spot really gets going. In soybeans, most commonly we're looking at R2 to R3. In soybeans, we like an early pass, possibly in the fungicide program. and then also, or not fungicide, herbicide program, and then also the later traditional timing of R2 to R3. In wheat, we'd like to see it on flag leaf, so Feeks 9, and then up until flowering at 10.5. So let's talk a little bit about what Pacesetter is and how it works. Normally, people at this point put up the disease triangle, which talks about you need a pathogen, you need the right environment, and you need a susceptible host. And traditional fungicides work by removing or suppressing the pathogen. In this particular case, Pacesetter is not really active on the pathogen, it is active on the host. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like. So, there we go. So the process is called induced systemic resistance. And what we're doing is turning on the different systems within the plant that are going to fight these different microbes. And so we're creating antimicrobial compounds within the plant. Also, at the same time, we're increasing the amount of lignin in the cell wall. The intent of the plant is to wall off any kind of pathogen. And this also works in our benefit to improve structural integrity later in the season, and thinking primarily corn. And we'll show you a picture that maybe helps out to demonstrating that. And then promoting plant growth. There are hormones that will increase the plant's ability to add grain. But we also improve photosynthesis by increasing the amount of chlorophyll that the plant has in its leaves. And let's see, we'll get to this a little bit first. Quite often you've heard of the jasmonic or salicylic acid pathways. We have a foot kind of in both. Primarily we claim ISR type activity, but we also do have some SAR activity as well. This typically will ramp up in the plant with 24 to 48 hours after the application and last for up to 21 days. So Pacesetter is a group P5 fungicide, so that means its resistance potential is quite low. As I said before, we're not really active on the pathogen. We're creating those compounds in the plant that fight the pathogen for us. Compare that, particularly I would highlight strobies, group 11 fungicide, where the resistance potential is quite high. In much of the Midwest, we find that strobilurins are now resistant to things like Cercospora, frog eye leaf spot in corn, and also frog eye leaf spot in soybeans, and gray leaf spot in corn. This typically, the group 11, when they develop resistance, it's very much like a light switch. It's either they're working or they're not. In the case of the triazoles, group 3 fungicides, it tends to be a slower turn where you just need to ramp up the rate to get the same effect over time. And eventually you get to the point where you find that the product is no longer working. For the HDIs, the group 7 fungicides, relatively new in the row crop market, we have seen resistance develop in tomatoes and tree fruit to consistent use in those crops. So it's one of those ones that we know that the potential is somewhere between medium and high, and we do need to be careful with that. Using a P5 fungicide along with your other fungicides is going to help us manage our resistance. So in corn, the target diseases that we have good data for would be northern corn leaf blight and then also gray leaf spot. In the case of soybeans, we're talking about brown spot, so Sequoia brown spot, and then most commonly frog eye leaf spot, Cercospora. In cereals, looking at powdery mildew, septoria, and some other leaf blotch of diseases in different geographies. In dry beans, we've also got a label for bacterial blight. So I mentioned I was going to show you some pictures of a little bit greener plant. So fungicide and Pacesetter together, we can see a little darker colors than the fungicide only. And this is quite common. And when you do try out your Pacesetter, what I would suggest is make sure that you've got a good marking of your line of comparison, this line between treated and untreated. And in the September timeframe, I'd encourage you to get into your field and take a look. Grab a few plants from this side of the line and very close to this side of the line. Soil types are hopefully quite similar. You're going to see a big difference in the amount of green matter still in the tissue that is continuing to add dry matter to your crop, whether it's corn or soybean. A good picture that Brad took. The greener color just a few feet away, you can see that the leaf senescence has occurred a little bit prematurely. And this is with the fungicide as well. So here's what Pacesetter adds to that program. A little bit larger leaf size, wider, a little bit longer. Again, Brad talked about the tip back that will occur in fungicide alone. Here we have the Pacesetter plus the fungicide. Same type of thing, a little bit more fill on the cob, greater girth, larger leaves. I talked a little bit about stalk strength, and there's a couple of things I think going on here. We happened to get a drone up over a field that had just experienced a derecho storm. That was in 2020. The southern end of the field had Emergen L, Pacesetter, and the fungicide. And as we walked across this field, we left our cars and struggled through this a little bit. But when we got to the line where the fungicide only had been applied, things got a lot more difficult as far as trying to move through. And what we see is an improvement in stalk strength. And I would say in the case of a lot of abiotic stress, you'll see a plant cannibalize the pith of a stalk. And so the stalk tends to weaken in very, very droughty, stressful type of environment. And we can help with standability in that. Again, looking at a difference between the fungicide and the Pacesetter fungicide program. And here's our line of comparison where we have a lot more chlorophyll evident, and then a corresponding yield increase that goes along with that more efficient and productive plant. Here's the piano chart and the number of wins that we have. Essentially, we total it up on average 7.4 bushels advantage. This is in wet years and dry years. I have found in our replicated trials that if we do see enough disease to rate, that this average bushel per acre increases because we add an additional disease control over what the fungicide alone can provide. In a little drier year, it's still paying its way. So there's a good ROI on this in corn for sure. Looking at soybeans, similar type of advantage on average, 4.9 bushel, 7.5% increase in soybeans. This is an easy application and a real nice ROI. So we did something a little different this year. We did some of our grower test trials, so some strip trials. And so what we did in one section of the field was looking at some of our products, the Rhizostar Bio, our granular fertilizer, and then we compared a not yet registered, but will be shortly. We expect to see registration, our Section 3 EPA registration, sometime this late winter, early spring, and we compared it to a competitor bifenthrin. So we'll see some data there. And then looking at, we treated everything the same, but we had our Pacesetter and Quilt. So fungicide, we added Emergen into that tank mix, and then just looked at the fungicide by itself. Okay. So here we have Pacesetter, Emergen, and Quilt at 246 bushels, and compared ourselves just to the Quilt by itself. The other additional thing that we're looking at is rising beryllium, which is a nitrogen fixer. We applied that at B4, and we compared that to something that's also in the market, Pivot Bio, at the same timing. So those are the differences between these two bars, but we did see a very nice improvement in the overall yield. Looking at a little bit different section of the field, and here we're just looking at Pacesetter and Quilt versus Quilt and Pacesetter Emerging Quilt. So we do see an improvement using just Pacesetter alone with the fungicide, but the addition of Emergen, I think Pacesetter does a really nice job with biotic stress, and I'm talking about different diseases and improved plant health. But I think we also see a benefit of having Emergen into the program to reduce abiotic stress. So I like to think of them as the peanut butter and jelly of our fungicide world. Yes, yes, please add that. A few dollars more than you add the Emergen one with it. Another section of the field looking at corn, Pacesetter Quilt at BT, the Pacesetter Emergen Quilt, and then comparing it to Quilt alone. Here we're looking at essentially the only differences between this particular strip was that Neovo was used rather than bifenthrin. Neovo is a novel new corn soil insecticide that controls corn rootworm, also has activity on seed corn maggot, wireworm grubs, and more importantly, I think, than other products that are in the marketplace currently, is that it does a very nice job of suppressing root lesion nematode. So we get the full package with this price point, again, similar to bifenthrin and or Capture LFR, and I think this is going to be something that growers want to take a real good look at in the future. Again, the only difference between these two slides is that we used Acuron as our pre-herbicide, and in this particular case, we used Lexar. But very similar result. You find that Neovo and bifenthrin perform very similar. Looking at soybeans, again, the difference here is we're looking at, this is kind of, I call it the Pro Farm acre, where we're looking at our inoculum. We're looking at our Neovo for our infertile application for controlling rootworm. We've got Emergen along with our herbicide to reduce the amount of injury. We have Starvis included for white mold control. And then we did include Pacesetter and Emergen with our fungicide program. In another section of the soybean field, we did a comparison of Emergen along with FlexStar versus just FlexStar by itself. In a little bit, the strip next to it, we did Pacesetter and Quilt, Pacesetter Emergen and Quilt versus Quilt by itself. So yield results. In these two bars, we're going to compare. We've got Emergen and FlexStar, and then we followed up with Pacesetter Emergen, FlexStar, and Quadrants. So here we have the Emergen used versus the FlexStar alone. So this is no Emergen during the herbicide pass at B4, B5. And then it also has the fungicide addition, Pacesetter Emergen versus just Quadrants by itself. And a very nice return on investment in soybeans, approaching 10 bushels. Looking at this in a little bit different part of the field here, we've got Pacesetter, Emergen, and Quilt versus Quilt by itself, but we also have the Emergen included in the herbicide pass. So again, a real nice improvement in that particular location. Here we have a difference in the pre-herbicide that we used in these first two bars. This is Deno pre versus sequence pre in soybeans. And then again, we did the Emergen along with the FlexStar. and versus FlexStar by itself in this column. And in this column, we have Emergen and FlexStar together versus Emergen in this column. So again, having some improvement in the amount of damage that we might see from the herbicide, plus the Emergen Pacesetter along versus just the Pacesetter or fungicide by itself. So you can see a nice yield increase with these treatments as well. And I think this was my last soybean slide. I think we've got Pacesetter and Quilt, Pacesetter Emergen Quilt, and then Quilt alone. And again, the addition of these two products really enhances our fungicide. Oh, I guess I did. I misspoke. One more. The Emergen, the pre-emerge herbicide in this particular case was pre. So that's the difference between what we see a very similar trend. Okay. I'm going to turn it back over to Scott.
Thank you, Brian. And thank you, Scott, for being on today. Brad, would you like to go ahead and introduce Scott? And then Scott, you're going to go ahead and advance through your slides. So I'll go ahead and give you permission, Scott.
Okay.
Yeah. I've enjoyed working with Scott, and we've worked very closely for the last 3+ years. He's an outstanding agronomist here in Indiana and East Central Illinois, and he's with Wilson Fertilizer, and he's really had a lot of experience with both Pacesetter and then last year with Emergen, and he's going to share some of the experiences that he has seen out in the field. Go ahead, Scott.
All right. Well, good morning. Thanks for having me today. As Brad said, Scott Deno, I've been in the business about 17 years, farmed for 20 years prior to that. And this product was brought to us 3 years ago, right, Brad? If I understand right. And I was looking at data that was just south of me in Benton County and saw some results that I liked, some anywhere from 12 to 20 bushel right in my back door. And I thought to myself, this is something that I think is worth looking at. So I took it to growers and started running with it. And we've had good successful sales. So this particular slide here, Brad and I went out and looked at this field this summer, was taken out here just on the edge of Kentland. If for some of you not quite sure where Kentland is, we're halfway between Indianapolis and Chicago, just about 40 miles north of Purdue. This particular grower had a field of corn on corn and corn on soybeans. It's a 140-acre field, and we basically, all he wanted to do was treat the corn on corn side. And that was with Pacesetter and fungicide, as you see there on the right. And this Pacesetter is doing what it says it will do. I mean, if you can look at the tip back, and I have had scenarios of fungicide alone, fungicide Pacesetter alone, not in same fields, not side by sides, but in proximity of areas. And unfortunately don't have many pictures of those, but where we were seeing the tip back was reduced with the Pacesetter added with our fungicide. And we just run basically an azoxystrobin propiconazole with an insecticide and your spray deposition. This is all done by air. And then we add this 6.5 ounces of Pacesetter, and we experience the girth in the ears, as you can see. And one thing that Brad and I noticed, if you look at this pith here, it's not a huge selling point, but if you look at the size of that pith in the center of that cob, that just leaves a better pathway to get those nutrients out to those kernels. This particular scenario right here, I talked to the grower afterwards, and there was 40 bushel on this yield. He went from 220 to 260. He was ecstatically happy, and I would say that business is going to grow. And so we did some Emergen Pacesetter. Brad and I talked a little bit this morning on some soybeans. Unfortunately, we got into kind of a wet area, and the data was a little inconclusive, but I don't have pictures, but we did see a lot of increased plant health. But my experience with Pacesetter on corn, yes, we see better disease control. We see a darker, greener, more stay green plant. And we saw that in the field on the previous slides where we saw better plant health, greener plants, better quality stock. And most of my clients that I can tell you about on the sales side is I have taken it and ran with it, and it's been all in or all out. And I have had a couple scenarios from my side where growers have had fields across the way from one another. And again, I went back to the tip back where they had the Pacesetter with their fungicide, Pacesetter not. And they said, oh yeah, you could see the tip back. I have yet to been able to get that yield data out of them guys. And I am still working on trying to get that from them to see where we're at. So I overall think it's a win-win because it's a third mode of action with a low resistance with a low rating to getting resistance. And I think that's a win-win because as we all know, our strobies, propiconazoles, a lot of these things from overuse can eventually start building up some resistance in our plants. And this is one way to mitigate that, in my opinion. But it's been a pretty with the cost of that product to be put in, it's been I don't want to say an easy sell, but it's been pretty much a no-brainer for everybody that I talk with. If that helps. So with that, I don't have a whole lot more. Again, thank you for having me. And if anybody's got any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thanks, Scott. I'm going to go ahead and pause right now and just give an opportunity for people to answer or ask questions. Seth, thanks so much for answering some of the questions in the chat. I always like to bring them verbally just in case people are multitasking. So one question was asked, in the mixture of Pacesetter and Emergen, did the combination reduce their dose rate as solo, or does the dose rate for the combination the same as a solo application? And Seth answered that. He said same rates, no reduction. Which product is for abiotic stress or biotic stress, and which is for abiotic stress? So Emergen L is for abiotic and Pacesetter is for biotic. And we have one more question here. Should Pacesetter be vigorously shaken before tank mixing? Brad, would you mind taking that question?
It mixes very, very well. Now, if it were to get frozen or be exposed to much lower temperatures, then yes, you'd want to shake that jug and, but we haven't really seen any real problems, in terms of mixing the product. Scott, you got any thoughts there?
Well, I was just going to add, I mean, we've probably run anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 acres of Pacesetter, and it's all gone through our mix plant, and we've had no issues. One grower did tell me last year he thought he had a little bit of a problem. Found out it was a little bit, I think, a lack of agitation. The product was going directly in the tank. This past year, they ran it through their inductor, and he said we had no problems. So I guess my takeaway would be is if you're dumping it right into your sprayer tank, just again, like anything else, give it some agitation time, and you shouldn't have any issues. We never had any nozzle plugging, nothing in all the acres that we did on ground for soybeans. And pretty much all our Pacesetter went on by air. And I will just add this, it was kind of interesting. I had a grower stop by my house, and a neighbor actually, and I do farm a little bit, and he goes, what was in your aerial fungicide that was not in mine? And because it does put out kind of a yellow path. And immediately that's what I told him. And then I started to talk with him about it. And he had some of that applied to his acres this year. Now I haven't talked to my associate who handles that account to see what those results were yet this year. But it was just kind of interesting that it caught their eye to see that yellow gleam coming out of the back of that airplane with the Pacesetter in there. But mixing, no issues with nozzle plugging or anything like that from any of our applicators from the retail standpoint.
Well,
Awesome.
Scott, the comment that you made about seeing a different color, from the aerial applied application. Occasionally I'll get somebody say, hey, this is a little darker yellow orange type tint. You can see a little bit of that in your sight gauge if you're pre-mixing. And that's really the only comment that we get. And overall, we've had very good results mixing it with all kinds of other nutritionals and different fungicide combinations, different adjuvants, and just really has not been an issue with either one of those two products. The only thing I would say about Emergen L, and I think you saw a disclaimer on one of the slides, we do not recommend putting it with high sulfur and high phosphorus. So we have chosen to stay away from some of the in-furrow applications, even though we would probably have a fit on most of the fertilizer combinations. But when you get into ammonium thiosulfate, high rate of phosphorus in a 1034O, we just have chosen to avoid those situations unless somebody is very well versed on what to expect and all of that. So our label is then, falls right in line with that as well.
Mm-hmm. And maybe even fertigation, Emergen L through a drip tape or overhead, doing some work with drip tape and having good results. So we'll have some dosage recommendations coming up this year for those applications. Sorry, Angela.
Nope, that's fine. Thank you guys for your input. Are there any other questions for our speakers this far? Just put them in the chat, please. And we're here to answer questions and make this information as helpful to you and useful to you as possible. So please don't be shy. With that, we'll go ahead and hand it over to Seth. And Seth, you're going to talk a little bit about our new line of adjuvants.
All right, let's see. Can I advance? Yep, here we go. All right, so Seth Little, I'm from Northwest Indiana, 5th generation Purdue grad. See that back there? 12th generation American farmer. But why adjuvants? And I kind of got off on adjuvants early in my career. I made some mistakes 18, 20 years ago, reading the label wrong. Maybe it put a quart per acre instead of a quart per 100 gallons in crop oil, and had some bad experiences, whether it was phytotoxicity or tank mixes. And just, I get into adjuvants in a weird way. But why adjuvants? Adjuvant comes from the Latin word adjuvare, which means to help or to lend aid. So the focus is on the active ingredients. The farmer investment is in the chemicals. So the adjuvants are there to get the chemical into the plant. And we all know leaves are pretty much waterproof. You hit a leaf with a drop of water and it beads up and rolls off. So we need an oil like dissolves like, if you've got a waxy surface on that, or a non-ionic surfactant or some kind of surfactant to break through that waxy cuticle. Get that drop to stick, to spread, and to penetrate that leaf. And get your investment in the chemicals to do their job. So our portfolio, the second bullet point here, improved grower experience. Everything is low use rate. 1 gallon jugs. You typically going to use less than a gallon in a 1,000-gallon spray mix for our lineup. The next, complex tank mixes require compatibility. So this is a trend that is really in our face here. We're adding 3 and 4 different active ingredients in one tank mix. We're using less water volume. So now we have a saltier mix in that tank. And we've got more stuff going on, more chemicals to fight with each other, bind with each other. And how do we get the value out of each one of those chemicals? It's compatibility. So here, basically, I want to go back to a little bit. So Rizobacter is our sister company based in Argentina. And they are the premier manufacturer and innovator of adjuvants for South America. It's always, if people make a comparison down there, they say it's like Extremo, but cheaper. It's like Extremo, but better. So we're well known as a premium supplier of adjuvants. So what we have here, we've got 281 formulations in our dossier, products that are ready on the shelf. Many of them are commercial in other parts of the world, but for North America, I selected 4 that really have a unique spot for us. There's some practices in South America that are going to become trends here really quickly. So they're typically spraying 5 to 8 gallons per acre of spray solution, and their one machine is covering thousands of hectares. So, and they've got the little bitty pickups down there. So they have all kinds of room for mini bulk tanks and jugs. So the trend in South America has been very concentrated, low use rate chemicals. And now you double that with low spray volume, and you've got a really salty tank mix. So these solutions really target that issue. Our water conditioner is the foundation of everything. If you're starting with poor water quality, you're really hampering yourself. Just all the antagonism in the tank. If you're going to add ammonium sulfate to water that's high in calcium, you're going to make gypsum in the tank. You're going to add ammonium sulfate to water that's high in magnesium, you're going to make Epsom salt. So water conditioner is a very low use rate, creates a chelation in the tank. So those hard water molecules will stay in solution. They will not precipitate into a rock or a metal and plug your filters and your nozzles and abrade your nozzles. And I'll just go through each one of these individually. So a water conditioner is a phosphonic acid, very low use rate, as I said, 1 ounce per 60 ppms per 100 gallons. So that sounds kind of complex, but what we offer is a water testing service. So send me a sample of your spray water, and I will send you back a custom rate of water conditioner. So just go in the middle here. If you're moderately hard water, 300 parts per million, you're going to add 5 ounces per 100 gallons. So in a 1,000-gallon tank, what do you got? 50 ounces compared to 115 times 5, 575. I got that right? 575 ounces of liquid ammonium sulfate for 50 ounces of water conditioner. That's in 1,000 gallons. So it also buffers as it stabilizes, as opposed to ammonium sulfate and some other water conditioners. The more you add to treat your water, the lower your pH will be. And that's good in some cases, but we want to be between 4 and 5.5 pH in most scenarios for crop protection chemistry. And this will get you there. 4.5 to 5 is typical. Integrum is probably my favorite product of all of ours. This creates a microemulsion in the spray tank. So this picture down here, Integrum on the right-hand side. I've done this. I should have brought it with me today, but I did it here at home. I took Dynamic, I took a generic MSO, and I took Integrum, and I mixed them up. This was back in April, I think, and I still have all the jars. The Integrum is still in solution. The oil has not separated out into that layer that you see on the left-hand side. So what does that mean in your situation? So if you've got multiple AIs in that tank, keeping the emulsion, especially the microemulsion, the tiny, tiny particles of oil are able to sequester and buffer all those little active ingredient molecules and keep them from interacting with themselves and other molecules in the tank, keeping it in solution where you don't have to have so much agitation. If you get rained out, you can leave that tank sitting for weeks and not have a problem, not have it all precipitated out at the bottom. So again, very low use rate. This is 3 ounces per acre. This came from our partners in South America, so I apologize. Clethodim, obviously this in Spanish is clethodim. But we know that when you add a grass herbicide, a graminicide to a tank mix, they don't play well. So if you think of soybeans where you're trying to control volunteer corn unless you're spraying, Fusilade or Arrow or Clethodim alone, you're not going to get the full efficacy of that volunteer corn control. So Integrum is great for that scenario specifically. I shouldn't say it loves. It was really created for the interactions of graminicides with other herbicides. It just happens that it works across active ingredients. Extremo is the same MSO. Oh, sorry, I should back up. And Integrum is a high surfactant MSO that creates a microemulsion. So that makes it very unique. You're not going to find another product that makes a microemulsion. Extremo is the same MSO with a different surfactant. So this has a trisiloxane organosilicone surfactant. It was very effective at low use rates. So with both these products, Integrum and Extremo, you're able to put a low dose of oil with a high dose of surfactant, which is really good for protecting against phytotoxicity, against leaf burn. So low use rate plus highly active oils make a great combination. So Extremo is the MSO with the trisiloxane. It's a super spreader. It's going to give you the penetration and anti-evaporation that the oil will give you. It'll give you the penetration again from the trisiloxane. Trisiloxane will make that droplet spread so quickly that you'll flood the stoma and you'll get entry through the stoma. So now you have two modes of action for entry. You're going through the stoma and you're going to break down the waxy cuticle with the oil. Low use rate again, 3 ounces per acre. Going back to the beginning, adjuvants are there to help. So this just illustrates how we get an improvement in performance adding an adjuvant to a fungicide. Finally, Rhizowet is our trisiloxane. It's the same trisiloxane organosilicone that's in Extremo, just without an oil. So this will give you also the two modes of action. You're going to go through the stoma, and you're going to, the surfactant will break down the waxy cuticle also. So you're going to get in both ways with the Rhizowet. This is extremely low use rate. 3 ounces per 100 gallons. And a lot of this product is used to reduce spray volume. If you're spraying Liberty or something that requires contact, say gramoxone, glufosinate, or fungicide that you really need to penetrate the canopy and get spread on the leaf to get really good efficacy, this is a good product. No worries with interactions on oils. So if you have any concern of phytotoxicity, this is your go-to. If you want to cut back from 20 gallons per acre to 12 gallons per acre, spraying Liberty, you'll get the same kind of control. So this product is it's very handy. That's all I had.
Excellent. Thank you, Seth. There's a few more questions. We'll wait till the end. Brad, why don't you take it over and finish it up, and then we'll answer those final questions at the end.
Okay. Real quickly, Brian did mention an exciting new technology that we're bringing forward called Neovo, and this is powered by Rhinotech technology, and this will be an EPA pending approval. We hope to have that later this spring, and we've been testing this product for the last 3 or 4 seasons, and we'll be bringing it to market here in 2025, hopefully, and again, pending EPA approval. This is an insecticide for corn rootworm, and the main focus for the Midwest will be primarily on corn, but we will have other crops on the label. Has a 20-ounce use rate. It's very, very competitive head-to-head with bifenthrin as far as its performance for a liquid in furrow option. But the big game changer difference is the efficacy that this product has on nematodes. So I think some of the yield that Brian had shared earlier, the biggest difference between the slides he showed with Neovo when compared with bifenthrin was had more to do with the suppression of nematodes than it did with the difference in control of corn rootworm, because quite frankly, bifenthrin's a good product. So if you can compete with that and also have nematode control, other below ground pest. So we're really excited about this, and that's really all we're going to say about it here today. We have done quite a bit of work, and here's some root digs that Brian and Angela and I did up in Wisconsin. And, we've had very, very sound results. So we do want to just go ahead and mention that today. We're kind of running out of time. So just in review, Emergen L, I think, what that brings to table on that herbicide pass is really phenomenal in terms of abiotic stress management. You heard Brian's comment of Pacesetter and Emergen for that fungicide pass. He mentioned calling it peanut butter and jelly, and I agree with that. So you have both biotic and abiotic stress. Pacesetter is just super solid product. Even with a fungicide, we're averaging somewhere between 6 and 10 bushel on average. And even on the conservative side, the average has been about 8.5 overall. But if you could get 6 more bushel of corn in today's market on a product that cost about $6 an acre, that is huge ROI. So then, with our adjuvants, we're new to the market. We're bringing these low use rate products into the U.S. And Seth is leading the charge on that as our product manager. And he's also the product manager for both Pacesetter and Emergen then as well. So we're excited to have him on board. And you'll be hearing more about Neovo from Brian and our other product managers in the near future. So with that, I think there were a couple of questions in the chat, and if you want to read those off, we'll go ahead and address those, Angela.
Yep. Thank you so much, Brad. So Taylor Stewart, I believe, is there data on these products for cannabis plants? Brian, would you like to answer that?
Yeah. Yes, the answer is yes, but not Pacesetter. We have a lower concentration product that we use in the specialty market called Regalia. It is a 5% product. We have to be very cautious on some of our specialty products. So we're making a point of having a little bit lower concentration in those markets. The higher concentration that we have in our row crop Pacesetter product allows us to reduce the cost and bring it into those markets where there's maybe a little more price sensitivity. So I would have them look for Regalia in the cannabis market. At this point, Emergen is not registered in the cannabis market. That is changing. So we may be able to bring that into the market, but it'll be several years before it's completely solidified.
Yeah, Taylor.
Sorry, go ahead, Angela.
Oh, Taylor, I was just going to say, we ironically have a Taylor on staff at ProFarm who is a cannabis expert and has worked a lot with this sector. Also, Brian Guest. So I'm not sure where you're located, Taylor, but if you go to our website, profarmgroup.com, and then click on the Talk to an Expert. Brian Guess or Taylor Hoover are two people that have a lot of experience in that sector and can help guide you to the right products. But we have had several growers have really good success with our products. I'll go ahead and drop their names in the chat as well for you, Taylor, so you can connect with them, okay? Go ahead, Seth.
Oh, we will have Illustria for the Western states, Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii, and Arizona. And that'll have the cannabis label on it. We will amend Emergen later on to include cannabis.
Okay. There we go. Sorry. So another question. So Emergen L can be used in a center pivot fertigation setting with UAN or only water. I assume that Pacesetter cannot be and still be efficient. So I guess the big question is about using it in center pivot.
Yeah, it's really about dilution. I think, with Emergen, it'll go through the leaves or the roots. It's very good in the soil. With Pacesetter, you're just going to wash it off. Brad, do you have any comment?
Yeah, one I've had some experience with Pacesetter in center pivot irrigation, and what happens, most growers do not want to speed up the pivot to a point where they're only putting about 1/10 or 1/15 of an inch of water on, and that's about what it would take if you wanted to go ahead and put it through the pivot. So, it can be done, but not everybody's set up to do it, or at that time, maybe you need more water than that, and it just doesn't seem like it's a viable option for you.
All right, so
in terms of adding it with nitrogen, I think you'd be fine with straight nitrogen, even with Emergen. But again, we've had some experience with high sulfur and high phosphorus. Obviously, later in the season, you wouldn't be putting that out probably through center pivot like a 10-34-0 or even ammonium thiosulfate at high rates. But, if you have any questions on that, give us a call and we can walk you through the best scenarios on how to make those products work.
Excellent. So just to clarify, Emergen L is good to be used in the center pivot, correct? However, Pacesetter is not.
Pacesetter could work, but, again, you have to speed the pivot up, and most people don't want to only put 1/10 of an inch of water on per acre.
Okay.
That's really speeding it up fast.
Excellent. And just a quick reminder, speakers, if you wouldn't mind throwing your information in the chat, your email and phone numbers. And of course, guests, you can go to our website, profarmgroup.com, and just go to the section, Talk to an Expert, and all of our staff is listed there. You can find the person that's in your region and speak with them directly as well. And then the last question, this one's for Seth. Seth, any organic approved adjuvants?
Yeah, I can't believe I brain farted and didn't bring that up. So Rhizowet was the last product I went over. It is currently OMRI listed in Mexico and US and pending in Canada. So that one's good to go. I will have an Extremo mineral oil version in a year or two. That'll be OMRI listed as well. And most of the pipeline will be OMRI listed coming forward.
Excellent. So again, that's Rhizowet, correct?
Yeah, Rhizowet.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Seth. All right. I'm just going to check the chat one more time. Any final questions? I know we're a little past time. I appreciate everyone sticking on for a little bit longer. I'm not seeing any final questions. Okay, so again, just visit profarmgroup.com to learn more about these products or to find a crop consultant or a PCA to speak with you further about your challenges, your questions, or how our products can help your crop. So with that, I'd like to thank our speakers, Brad, Brian, Seth, and Scott, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your expertise. And for all of you that have joined our webinar, we appreciate your time and joining in and learning about our products and our company. We hope to have this just be the start of the conversation. So please engage with us via email or phone. We'd really like to work with you as we continue to introduce biologicals to the row crop sector in the United States. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll hopefully see you again on a future webinar or perhaps at an event in your location. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Angela.
Thank you.